Hello and welcome to another Control Delete tutorials. Today what we're going to be focusing on is 3D Studio Max's Garment Maker and Cloth Simulation. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I've gone to just Google Images and looked for, done a Google search for sewing patterns, which doesn't seem like the most maybe exciting thing to be modeling. But I want to show it for how you can use it with Garment Maker, so to start I want to get a basically a sewing pattern. So this is the one I've chosen. I brought it into Photoshop and kind of cropped it, the image, so that it's 4.5 by 7.5 and at 300 DPI, and also put a gray background behind it because it was a PNG and it makes it really tricky to see while we're in Max. So this is the reference that I've created, so that you can kind of follow along with it. If you want, you can kind of just screen cap this in the video and use that as your reference. Just crop it. Like I said, I have mine cropped at 4.5 by 7.5. So I'm going to come into Max. I'm going to maximize my screen here and go into the top view, and I'm going to open up the material editor here. And there we go. Just make this a little while wider so we can see. So I'm going to just drag in a standard material. I'm going to drag in a bitmap image, and I'm going to go ahead and search for my picture that I have, my patterns here. So there's my gray image that I have. I'll drop that into my diffuse color slot. I'm going to double click on my material here and just make sure I turn on show shaded material in viewport, just so it makes it easy to see. So now that I have that, close that for a second, I'm going to create a plane in the top view. As you can see, my snaps are turned on here by default, just because of something else I was doing, so I can go ahead and turn that off for now. And I'm going to draw out a rectangle or a plane. I'm just going to make that a little darker to make it easier to see, and I'm going to get rid of my length and width segments. I'm just going to type in 1 by 1. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is make sure that it is some sort of aspect ratio that is basically 4.5 by 7.5. So I'm going to just do 75 if that was 7.5, which will make this 45. So just move the decimal place over, and I'm going to move this to 0, right clicking here on the swivel arrows and setting that to 0. And I'm actually going to drop this down just slightly, just so my reference is under the grid for whenever I start working here on my pattern. So I'm going to open my materials back up and just kind of pan this out of the way a little, and I'm going to drag from here and drop that onto my plane. So now we can see my image reference here. So the first part of the demo is going over Garment Maker, and Garment Maker is one of the modifiers in the modifier list here. It'll be down, where is, it actually won't apply on a plane. It has to apply on a shape, which is what we're going to create. So I'm going to do my best to try to follow the outline of these garment sections. So I'm just going to click at each corner, and I'm not worried about the dip here just yet. I can fix that after the fact. I'm just going to follow this as closely as I can. I'm going to do the same idea here, just clicking down to there. And just follow this around. And then back up to the top. And when it says, do you want to close spline, I'm going to say yes. So now I'm going to continue on doing this section. I'm just going to click on through to all the corners. Now I've chosen this pattern, and I hope that something I do ends up working okay. The part that I'm worried about is that this piece of fabric has kind of this pleat that it would end up creating. I may end up getting rid of this if part of this doesn't work. Okay, and then we have the sleeve. So again, just hitting all the corners. I'm going to hold shift here to give myself a straight line and finish that one up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is attach all of these together. So I'm going to go to attach, and I'm going to select each one, and then I'm going to go to vertex, and I'm going to change all of these. Do a window. Why is my window selection not showing up? That's really weird. There we go. That was weird. I don't know what happened there. Maybe it was waiting for me to finish attaching. I might have still had that active. So everything's been attached. I'm going to select all the vertices. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to Bezier corner. And that's going to give me these little handles. And so what I can do is I can use move, and I can now move these handles kind of like you would use the path tool in Photoshop if you've ever used that. And I'm going to go around to anywhere where I need to have this bend around more. I'm just going to try to match this up as close as I can get to the garment. Kind of like that. These ones are technically look like bent a little, so I'll do that. Shouldn't cause any issues. Okay, there's that one. That's pretty close. Put this one here in the sleeve. So this is where the sleeve will end up connecting. That's pretty good. Alright, that's good. And then the last one is just this section of the sleeve. Now this one is actually bowing out and then back in. It's kind of doing this ease in, ease out sort of thing. So again, trying to just match that up as close as possible. The last part is I'm going to go to spline. I'm going to select this one here. I'm going to pan down. I'm going to mirror this over to make the other one so they're exactly the same, but I'm going to do it as a copy so that I keep the one that I had. And I'm just going to move that off. And you can see that I may end up having to change this. Maybe these aren't as identical as I had thought they might be. So, you know, I'm just going to leave it like that. It should. Oh, let's go ahead and do it. I don't want to risk messing up something that I may not have to. There may be a reason that the sleeve is slightly different on one side. So we'll just make an adjustment there. Everything else looks basically the same. So this is the front of whatever this garment is. I'm not quite certain what it is, but it looks like just some sort of basic shirt. So what I'm going to do is I need to duplicate this and this, and actually both of these, because I only have one half of the front and one half of the back. So I'm going to go into spline mode, and I'm going to select everything here, and again I'm going to go down to mirror with copy, and I'm just going to copy all that. Now it doesn't matter the arrangement that I have here because I am going to end up moving these, but just to make things a little more organized, I am going to move the sections that are the same apart. So I'll move the sleeves over here to go with the other sleeves. And this is mostly to make the next section a little bit easier to do. Oh, I accidentally duplicated that. Let's get rid of that. I held shift whenever I drug that one over, and I accidentally duplicated it. Okay. Actually, bring these back over this way, just so we're keeping around the origin here of my scene. Let's move things closer together here. Alright, so that's been finished. Something else that I'm going to do is I want to make sure that these line up. I'll just leave them. Actually, they look pretty good. Alright, so the next part I'm going to do will end up deciding whether or not I'm going to keep these pleats. These ones will be fine, but these ones, the shoulders have to line up with the shoulders here in the sleeves based on where these would be sewn together. We're going to get rid of the reference now, so I'm just going to right click and hide that while it's selected, and I'm just going to center these objects. So I just went to hierarchy, affect pivot point only, center to object, so it's centered to the whole thing. And now I'm just going to right click on these to center everything. Alright, before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I'll just make a new folder and call this Garment _001. Alright, so before I end up applying Garment Maker to this, I've actually got to unweld all of the vertices from one another. So the way I do that is I go to vertex mode. Things are being weird again. Maybe it was still saving. I was going to say, don't crash on me in the middle of a demo, that'd be bad. Okay, so I'm going to select everything. I'm going to right click. I can either right click or I can just click on break. When I click break, you'll see everything becomes deselected. If I go to spline mode now, I can see that all of the splines have been broken apart. So they're no longer selecting everything. And that's what I want to have. So now I'm going to turn off spline mode. I'm going to go to Garment Maker. There it is, Garment Maker. When I click that, what it automatically does is it creates geometry for all of the pieces, and you will see that they are all triangles, and this is just the default for the way that Garment Maker works. It actually allows for better wrinkles and stuff that would be created by your fabric. Typically whenever I'm modeling, I try to keep everything four-sided shapes, but in this case this is what Garment Maker does. I'm going to change my density to 1 just to make this a little more dense, which will add a little more wrinkles. You want to be very careful with this number because this can end up crashing your system. If you put too high of a number in here, it's going to tessellate this quite a bit, and you're not gonna be happy with those results. Okay, so those are the 4 pieces. So now each one of these sections is called a panel. So I need to arrange these panels so that they'll all work together. So I'm going to take the back panels, and now whenever I go to rotate these, even if I change my selection to center and I rotate, they're going to rotate individually. So I'm going to make sure I turn on angle snap toggle. I'm going to rotate these 180 degrees, and I can see down at the bottom here in the Y that would have said 180. And I'm just going to go to move and line these as close as I can back to being about the same gap that I'm getting here. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one for now. Actually I lied. I'm going to move that to center here, and then I'm going to take this and drop it down a little bit, quite a bit actually. Okay, now these ones are already rotated the right way, so I'll go back to the top view. I'm going to line them up as close as I can to the center here, and I'm going to try to line them up as close as I can here as well. So now I'm going to take my sleeves and I'm going to move these just off to the side for a second. If you want to, you can rotate this whole thing up. I'm going to end up doing that here in a minute, but just for my panels I'm doing it this way. So this panel, I'm going to rotate 180 degrees, and I'm going to move it to line up with this panel as close as I can get it. I'm going to drop this one down as well. Let's see, I'll just type in -5. That way, let's go -10 actually, and then I'll go to the other one and move these so they're also at -10. Okay, and then I'm going to take both of these, I'm going to rotate them maybe about 60 degrees. And I'm going to move them pretty close to where they're going to get sewn on here. Now the one thing Garment Maker is going to try to do is it's going to try to match up this seam with this seam. Now I've tried to work from a pattern to see if this will actually line up properly. Because normally if there are too many vertices here to line up with right here, it's going to cause an issue. So I'm hoping it works. Always a good idea to test these things out off screen, but you know, let you learn through my mistakes if that's what it's got to be. So I'm going to rotate this one 180 degrees. I'm going to move it down to -10. I'm going to go to the top view here. You know what, actually I did the wrong one. I need to rotate this one because I'm going on the other side. It's my bad. So 180. Line these up as close as possible. Drop down -10. And now I'm going to take both of these. I'm going to rotate them. I believe we did 60 degrees. And I'm going to line I'm just doing this so I can get these pretty close to the same arrangement here on both sides. Okay. So now for the moment of truth to see if the seams will actually work. So what we can see is we've got the front of the garment and the back of the garment. So we've laid out our panels, now we have to sew them together. So that sounds a lot worse than maybe it is, but we're going to go down to seams. And I'm going to try these ones first just because they're the ones that I'm worried about. So I'm going to select both and I'm going to say create seam. Alright, seam splines length not within tolerance. Let's see if it gives us a seam tolerance. Okay, I'm going to change this to, I'm guessing it's looking for a higher number, so I'm going to go to 0.1 and see if that will allow. So I'm going to click, hold control, click again, create seam. Still not within tolerance. Alright, say 0.5. Okay, so what it did is you can see the geometry had changed ever so slightly to match this one. So that's good. So this should end up working now. So I'm going to click these two because a seam will be created there. Create seam. The sleeve at the end here is going to be a hole, so we don't want a seam there. So we'll select these two, and I'm holding control to pick the second one. And I'm going to weld there, or weld, create seam there. Alright, so this part is what I have a feeling might be an issue. So I'm going to select the pleat, I'm going to say create seam, and then I'm going to select these two. This I have a feeling is going to give us an issue. Yeah. So it doesn't like that because of that there. So I could go back to the line and remove it. For now, I'm just going to leave it as a hole. I know it's going to not be ideal for having my shirt this way, and I don't think there's really any way around this, even if I select all of that. No. So, oh well, we're going to have holes here in the shoulders, but we know that now, so that's fine. Create seam. And come down there, create seam. I don't know why you'd really want pleating there. This must be a girl's shirt, I'm guessing. Create seam. We're just going to work our way around here. These are going to get seamed together there and there. And this is the bottom, so actually we need to remove that seam. That's delete seam. That's my bad. Okay. The back is going to get pulled together, so create seam there. Create seam on the bottom. I'm going to seam the front together just since the shoulders aren't connected. And then I think this will be our last one. Alright. So that's going to end up creating our, oh, we didn't do this one. Now we will be able to weld these together more than likely once this thing has all been put together. It's just not ideal to have to do it after the fact. Okay. So now on top of this we're going to create, or we're going to add the Cloth Modifier. Now I know the seams all look like they disappeared, but they're actually just fine here. So I'm going to go to the object properties of this cloth. I'm going to select it, so that's line 01, that's the name of my line, and I'm going to say be a cloth. I'll say use panel, no, be a cloth, and I'm going to just go with the default settings. You can mess with some of the different ones, they all kind of do different things. I just find default works for this next part, and I can always simulate the cloth as a different fabric after based on whatever that fabric is. So I'm going to click OK. Now we see my seams are showing up again, since the Cloth Modifier knows that this is actually cloth. So we're going to use and show the sewing springs. We have to turn off gravity, because if I simulate this it's going to end up falling, and that's not going to be good. The other thing I'm going to do is rotate this 90 degrees so that it's up and down. Okay. Something else that I would normally suggest is, if I'm going to simulate something like this, I want to make sure that it's not going to end up falling you know, off of this. Whenever it pulls these seams together, it's good if you have a character that the seams are basically going around. So I could make a very simple mesh just to work in here. So I'm going to do that just briefly. I'll just do it in the front view. So I'm just going to take a box, create it in the top view here. I'm going to move that to just above my objects. So I'm going to convert this to an editable poly. I'm going to extrude this down all the way to the bottom here. I'm going to drop down my graphite modeling panel here. I'm going to go to modeling, turn off that. I'm going to go to Swift Loop, and I'm going to add some loops in here. So these are just going to go around the character. So I'll have that for my arms, and then just a very simple kind of torso is going to be created here. Okay. So I'm going to double click these to select the loops, and I'm going to just pull this out to about where the shoulders would rest. Go into wireframe mode here, and basically just stretching this out to create a very simple sort of shape for what my character, you know, would fill in. Oops. So I'm going to go back to Garment Maker, or not garment, go back to the cloth, and I'm going to add this object. So actually, let's select that. I'm going to put a turbo smooth on this character, and I forgot to extrude him some arms, so we'll just do extrude, just extrude those far out. I'm going to scale the ends here and pull them down, kind of like that. Probably also be a good idea for this to have these sections here under my shoulders of my garment, and then have the arms here also down. like this. So that way when this shrinks up around this, it will kind of keep some sort of form on the inside. Alright, and then Turbo Smooth. Pretty sweet looking character, isn't it? Alright. And I'll just convert him to an editable poly. Alright, back to Garment Maker. Or back to my garment. So from here, I need to weld or to seam all of this together. But in order for it to understand that I have a character in here, just gonna line this up a little closer to be between my -10 and my 0. So in order for this to keep a shape, I need to attach this character. So I'm going to go to Object Properties, make sure my line is still set up as a cloth because that's important. And I'm going to go to Add Object, I'm going to select the box that I started with, my little character, and I'm going to make him a collision object. And I'm going to turn my depth and my offset to a really low number for this. So I'm just going to go to 0.1 for that. Always go back and make sure your cloth object is set as cloth, because every now and then I've had this to where it resets and I really don't know why. I'm going to click OK, and then now what we're going to do is simulate this. Now the simulation we're going to do is not clicking the simulate, because what this will do is if I had this character animated moving around, the simulation would actually try to move the cloth based on those movements, and it'll actually key or add animation keys to that object. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is simulate it moving together. So we have simulate local and simulate local damped. The difference is damped is a slower process as it tries to pull these pieces together much slower, whereas local will go a little bit faster, but it can end up making things move too fast for the simulation. So I start off with simulate local damped, and when I click this, it should end up pulling these seams together. So I'm going to do simulate damped. Okay, so it is actually running, but what it ended up doing was rotating this back to where it was before. Apparently it didn't like the fact that I had rotated. So I'm going to undo my simulation. So I'm just going to hit Control-Z, and I'm going to rotate this back to lying down. And I'll just simulate it on the character here. So I'll rotate that also 90 degrees and do that. So I'll line him up in the arms. And then move him down. I'm just going to type in -5 because I know that's center there. Alright, so I'm going to try that again. And turn off my grid by hitting G. Alright. Where did my seam go there? Did I not put one? Thought for sure I had one. Okay, I'm going to erase the Cloth Modifier real quick just to make sure that I have all my seams in. I thought I did that one, but I guess I didn't. Alright. Make sure I have my ones on the shoulders that are here and here. I do. Alright. Weird. I want to make sure I remove the Cloth Modifier from him as well. Alright, so I'm going to add that again. So cloth, make sure gravity's off. We're using and showing the sewing springs. I've made my cloth object a cloth. Set it to default and hit OK. Make sure the sewing springs show up. I'm going to go back in the properties, make sure that's still cloth, and add box. I know I can add them all at the same time, but if I do that, I've just had it happen to where it doesn't keep it. So this is mostly just out of habit. So I'm going to set this to a really low number, 0.0. I think I did 0.1 before, but I'll do 0.01, that's fine. So that's a collision object, that's a cloth object, hit OK, and now I'm going to do simulate damped again. Alright, so it's going to try to pull these pieces together. Now if there are any parts that were pulled through the mesh, they're probably going to end up having problems. And I'm going to let simulation kind of finish doing what it does here. You see there, it wasn't able to sew those parts together. And I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to hide this for a second just to see what it did there. Well, that's actually not too awful. Okay. So now I've got this. I'm going to hide my little dummy object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this now to an editable mesh, because it's been kind of put together here. So I'm going to right click, convert to editable poly. I'm going to go and select borders and hit Control A to select all of my borders here. I'm going to hold Control and click vertex to turn my border selection into vertex selection, which should allow me to weld everything here together. And that looks pretty good. Looks like it got everything. Small hole right here. It's easy to fix. I can just select those vertices. I can hit collapse and it'll pull them all together. And since that arm was messed up, chances are this one will also be. Yep. So I'll just select all those. Sometimes in the cloth, if you turn off sewing springs, it will weld everything together for you, but I had bad luck with it today, so I'm just doing it this way. Whoops, collapse. And you can really do this to any areas that it didn't weld. I'll check the other side here just to make sure. Because now it's not trying to simulate the cloth, so I can weld things together very easy on my own. And I can make this object cloth again. I'm just doing this just to clean up areas. Alright, that's probably fine. Definitely fine for what we're doing. Okay, so now that that's been simulated, I'm going to take both of these objects, rotate. I'm going to rotate from selection center 90 degrees. And just to be safe with this, I'm going to select everything, which I already had it selected. I'm going to go to Utilities, Reset Transform, Reset Selected, and I'm going to right click and convert these objects back to editable polys. The reason I had done that is because if I don't do that, it'll keep that rotation information, and my pivot points will all be kind of following the wrong direction. So now I'm going to select my garment object again. Might as well go ahead and name that garment. And I'm going to put the cloth modifier on it once more. Actually, I'm going to take that off. I'm going to use push modifier. I'm going to push this out slightly away from the mesh, because some of these problem areas might end up fixing themselves, or they may end up sticking to the skin there. Ideally, you don't want this kind of stuff to happen. And it's only because I used this really kind of generic mesh to put in here that this had even happened in the first place. But now I'm going to convert this to edit poly, and I'll put the cloth modifier on it again. I'm going to add my garment object, set it as cloth. I'll set it as, let's say, cotton, something different. And I'm going to click OK. I know that's silly, but I'm going to go back into it, add my box character, make sure I click it, set it as collision. I'm going to go to like 0.1 this time. May have ended up pulling those parts in because I went with such a low number before, so I'm going to try that. Make sure garment is set to cloth. Good. Okay. So now I'm going to turn gravity back on, and I don't need sewing springs, so I can turn those off. And I'm going to go ahead and do simulate local. So now my cloth is basically going to try to come to rest as much as possible. Now some of these areas are being pulled tight or pulled against the skin, so they're probably not going to simulate properly. I can always come in, convert this to an edit poly, and just pull these up, which should help that. Also, ideally, these would be pulled together. So I'm just going to convert this to an editable poly, and this is how I make those fixes to there. So I can go to freeform, and I can use the different paint brush tools here. So I'm going to move my tools off and change this to something smaller, like 5, and I can use pull. The strength there is a bit high. I'm going to set this to a lower number, and so I can kind of go over this and just pull these areas out away from everything else here. I got a little hole there I could weld. I'm just going to make this so, just pull this out just a little bit away. And then I can come in with relax, kind of relax these areas after some of them started bunching up a little bit. So this is a way to kind of fix that. This is also going to take any holes that I have and make them more apparent. So kind of hold that back down into the skin and just fix that. And then fix these parts. Also have some welding errors along there. So go ahead and pull this up. Relax. You kind of just have to go between these. Okay. So let me go ahead and fix these couple of holes. Turn off my relax tool there. So I'll just select these. Now, if I have keyboard keyboard shortcut override toggle turned off, if I have two vertices selected and I hit Control-Alt-C, I will collapse them together. So just something to keep in mind there. Let's see, problems here. Control-C, and kind of get all those. Now again, I should be pulling those parts together, but I'm not really all that worried about that for now. Alright, so I'm going to apply my cloth simulation again and see if I can get it to fall off the body a little bit better than this. Right now it's really not looking the way I would want it to look. So I'm going to put on cloth, and this time we'll try adding this in at the same time and see if it does everything alright. So box, collision, point 1, point 1, garment. Let's try to pick something else. We'll go with a heavy material, so we'll just go with a generic heavy material. Okay, that's set as cloth, that's set as collision. Simulate local. There, you can see it kind of falls off the body a little bit better than I did before. what's nice about this is it'll allow us to basically simulate this thing dropped first, and then I'm going to convert it once more. Let's get rid of the other cloth modifiers on there. I'm going to take this and I'm going to grab let's grab part of his arm here, and I'm going to apply a bend modifier to just that part of the arm. So let me go into my my gizmo here, and I'm going to rotate this so it aligns a little bit better with the arm. Okay, so I'm going to bend it, and I'm going to change my center point here. That would be incredibly weird. Alright, let's use limit effect. There we go. So that way I can limit the bend to just a small portion of the arm. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to animate that coming up. So I'll set it back to 0 for the beginning, and then I'll just bend this up partway here, and then have it come back down. I'm going to put my cloth back on here. Add my object again. Change this. Alright. Okay, so I have that. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do simulate. So when it runs the simulation, the cloth should end up following the arm moving up, and it's going to key this animation so that I can keep it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and let this go through, and then when we come back I'll play it for you. Alright, so the simulation is finished, so we're going to go back to the beginning here, and then we'll just hit play, and you can see the cloth simulating and wrinkling up and doing all the stuff that it basically should do. Now this cloth is kind of stiff right now because I've chosen to use this, heavy fabric, so everything's kind of moving, but you can kind of get the idea of how the cloth simulation should work. So I'm going to do another video where I just do simulation of cloth without having to go through Garment Maker, and that I'll upload as soon as possible so that we have that one as well. I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to our channel and our videos, and if you guys have any questions or anything that you want to do, leave them in the comments. If you have any ideas of things that you would like to see, again, leave those in comments, and I'm pretty good about getting back on commenting back on any of your comments to let you know if I'm going to be able to do something or if I'm able to help in any way. So once again, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video.